is Terry Bradshaw, quarterback, Pittsburgh Steelers.
It's 7:15. There's a new home run champion of all time, and it's Henry Aaron.
This is baseball, Major League Baseball. And this is
ABC's Monday Night Baseball, live from Fenway Park in Boston, Massachusetts.
Looking. He's under the gun. He's fired. He throws. It is.
Hello and welcome to the Past Star Prime podcast. I'm your host, Scott Johnson. Got my two other buddies and hosts, Bill Mahoney and Mark Hoffman, here today as we're going to look back at the October 27th, 1975 issue of Sports Illustrated with George McGinnis on the cover. The Indiana Pacers and ABA star is moving to the NBA and Philadelphia. And as we look ahead to the weekend of trick-or-treating, the guys are dressed up in their favorite costumes. Bill, you're a zombie, and Mark is Victor Wembanyama. So
I've grown 1 foot and 5 inches.
Yes.
So as kids, what was your best costume that you ever had, and did you ever go as anything that was sports related?
Nope. I was a ghost or a hobo every year.
That hasn't changed.
It hasn't, man. We had a sheet, or I was dressed up in some raggedy pants, which I already wore, and shoes, and went, okay, I'm a hobo. Carried a suit, a pillowcase, made it all dirty.
Yep.
When I was a kid, the worst outfit I ever had, and I think this was my mom's idea, she dressed my sister and I. I was the monkey, and my sister was the organ grinder. Really embarrassing stuff.
Oh my God! So that's a lot of work, man.
Yeah. Oh my God. Again, I'm like 6 years old or whatever. Yeah. But when I was older, I would have these adult Halloween parties always at the house. In fact, I met my wife at a Halloween party that I threw, and I had some great costumes. I had in '87. I was a Wall Street investor when the crash happened, so I had a 3-piece suit on with a noose around my neck.
Nice.
I went into a
suicide is always funny.
It is. Nothing resonates more than someone dying.
I went into a hardware store and said, "Hey, do you have rope?" And they said, "Yes." "Can you tie it in a noose for me?" And they're like, "What the hell?" But in terms of sports outfits, I had some great ones. I had one where I was Jose Canseco. I had a gun, and then I took like the old phones and took the cord off and put it like at my waist, like I had a cell phone. I think I was Pete Rose maybe one year. I had betting slips all over me.
Nice.
Anyway, it's you.
Wow. So you
Mark, can I ask you one question?
Yep.
I just want to clarify. You said you had an adult party.
Yeah.
Is that
I don't want to go there.
Than what we're thinking?
Yeah.
That means adults were invited to the party.
Oh, okay. If you have an adult party, I'm thinking, there's probably nudity, and Mark's probably naked. A lot of okay.
Yeah.
It was great, man, because we had a lot of people from CBS would come over. It was great parties.
Yeah, well, thanks for inviting us. I guess I'll keep checking the mail.
Well, we're talking late 80s here, so.
Yeah, thanks. I was out of high school.
My mom was very good at making costumes, really got into it. And one year I went as a baseball. I had, so it was basically like a big bag.
Like a baseball?
A big around me.
Wow.
And, all the stitching and, I remember like Lee McPhail was the American League president at the time. And so, his name was right there and stuff. And yeah, that was fun.
That's awesome. That's great. Yeah, I can picture your mom doing that.
Yeah.
Did one of the people open the door and say, and you go trick or treat, and they go, "Hey, buddy, I'm going to throw you a curveball here. No candy, just a trick."
Yep. And then that's when I took out the bat.
Yeah.
I said, hit this.
That's what I really miss is that because of the fire and losing my house, my neighborhood was so great on Halloween. I mean, the block would just be filled with kids. I don't think the neighborhood I'm in now will have a lot of kids.
Oh.
And,
Come over here, Mark. You can come over here. There's a zillion kids here.
My mom gets, she had 1,200 kids last year.
Wow.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
South Pass, man. Wow.
Damn.
Pass.
Ding ding scorecard swing. What's the story gonna bring?
Time to kick things off, and as we do every week, we start with the scorecard section. Batter up, Mark. You're leading off.
Oh, can I just say something really quick about the cover before I lead off?
No.
And And that is, so George McGinnis is on the cover in his Sixers uniform. And with my trivial knowledge of uniforms for sports teams, the opponent, all you can see is that it's a red uniform with white stripes. Do you guys have any idea which team he's playing against?
Kentucky Colonels.
It's the NBA.
Oh, sorry. Golden State.
No,
Bullets.
did they ever wear red and white? The what?
The Bullets.
No, good guess. All right, I'll tell you. The Atlanta Hawks. See, what a detective I am.
Yeah. Captivating.
I'm glad I know that now.
Yeah.
Useless uniform information. That's what I'm all about.
Leading off. Batter up, Mark.
I don't know. I just struck out on the. What do I do now?
I still love it, Mark. I can't wait to get those old Hawks 75.
I'm going to talk about the WFL, which is about to go out of business. But anyway, the Philadelphia Bell have their offices in the section of town right near this movie theater. And the movies that are playing at the theater really sum up what's going on with the World Football League. For instance, the movies that were playing there were SOS, Farewell, My Lovely, and Brother, Can You Spare a Dime? That sums up what was going on with the World Football League at the time.
Yeah. And the answer was no, buddy. We can't,
Yes.
we can't spare nothing. You're done. All right. Hitting second and talking about the Utah Stars uniforms that you can't quite see on the cover. Bill Mahoney.
Those were cool.
Yeah. Well, if you look in that really deep to the corner, there's a fan there, and it's wearing the old Laker white there. I'm going to talk about a team we all are interested about. It's the Washington Capitals. Last year, 74, they won 8 games. They lost 67 and they tied 5. But new season, new advertising approach. Here it is. It says, for as little as $4 a ticket, the least you'll feel is reasonably disappointed, and the most you'll feel is ecstatic, unadulterated, complete, and total euphoria. Last year, everybody frequently expected the Capitals to lose, and we did lose, frequently. But there were those nights, albeit few and far between, when we didn't lose, when we won. And when we win, you'd better be wearing a hat, because the shouting and the screaming and the cheering just about blows the roof off the Capitol Center. We're going to win a lot more games this year than we won last year. It would be hard not to. And for as little as $4 a seat, we're more than worth the money, because we'll either let you down a little or bring you up more than you've ever thought possible. When we win, it's like heaven. That's a wonderful ad approach.
Yeah.
Wow. That's good.
Hey?
They're embracing the fact that they stink, but stick with us. We're going to get better. And you know what the funny thing is? I was just reading the other day, and I want to say from 2007 till now, no team has been to the playoffs more than the Capitals. So
yeah, I mean they were once just the laughing stock in these pointed years. When I was a kid, the Capitals stunk.
Yeah, but
more importantly, they had great uniforms, that red, white, and blue.
Yes, I agree. Back to the uniforms. That's right. I think that was in the picture with.
Well, that's my theme this whole podcast, guys.
Yes.
But I'm saying, you think now though, $4 a ticket. I know it's been 50 years. $4. I mean, I think we.
Well, I tell you all the time, and I don't know how they're going to do it now in sports, but the idea back then was to try to just get them in the place. And I went to so many games as a kid, and there can't be 12, 13, 14-year-olds. First of all, parents wouldn't probably let them go like they let me, but you can't afford it either. You just can't. I mean, the cheapest ticket to a Kings or a Lakers game, or baseball, you might be able to find something affordable, but it's just crazy now. All right, I got one hitting third tonight. That's me, and this is Sports Illustrated bemoaning all the changes baseball has made for one reason and one reason only: the almighty dollar created by TV. Baseball created the pennant playoffs, which drastically would. So what that means is basically the championship series in each division. It used to be you won the American League and you won the National League, and then they played for the World Series. So they changed that up. And drastically reduced the excitement of the pennant races, according to SI, with TV in mind. It changed the traditional Wednesday opening of the World Series to Saturday. It switched midweek games from afternoon to night. It began the final game of this year's Boston-Oakland playoffs at 5 p.m., a terrible time to start a game. These changes were made for one reason. TV said they would make for bigger ratings, which means more money. They're right about one thing. It was for money, but way more people could watch a game starting at 5. I mean, Mark, you've said it a few times about how, you'd be at school and, the World Series was going on, and
Yep.
and I mean, that would have been torture if you were a true blue fan and, you're sitting there having to take a math quiz. So
They played all the World Series games during the day back then.
yeah.
There were no night games for the World
Yeah.
Series.
And that makes sense because, in the 20s, 30s, 40s and stuff, there were no lights at ballparks. So you had to play in the daytime. But
Yeah, but late 60s?
late
Yeah, that's
60s,
right. Yeah.
that finally they started to see, see the light, right? So SI was wrong on just about every point they made. And 50 years later, baseball has benefited big time from making the game accessible via television. So
They said it and meant it.
Bill, you lead us off. Lee Corso, who's been saying things for forever.
He has been. He's the Indiana University football coach, and he's speaking to alumni groups. I feel just like the head of a big company that lost all its money last year and trying to explain it to the stockbrokers. He did that for 3 years in a row. So he got to explain everything.
Yep. And the stockbrokers usually don't have as much patience as these guys do.
No. He just can't keep getting his job. Hey, another couple wins. Good job. Now you look at IU football now.
This other guy
Yeah,
I've
well,
never heard of, I don't think, until we had him in a They Said It a couple weeks ago, Mark, and that's Tony Mason, coach of Cincinnati.
Well, he's a master at telling great stories or relating stuff. So he was asked that. He said the thing is that 90% of the colleges are abiding by the rules, doing things right. The other 10%, they're going to the bowl games. Telling it like it is.
Yeah.
Right.
That hasn't changed. Except for now there's probably like 30% that are going to bowl games. Not on the up and up. This one was nuts. The Mexican Pan Am games were not a joyride for the Americans. The officiating was lousy and the hometown crowds did not like them. The U.S. team arrived to find their athletes' village sandwiched between a pulp mill and an asphalt plant, while the local atmosphere, both literal and political, was thick with hostility. Mark, the opening ceremony saw 110,000 spectators, and it was not a very warm reception for the good old Team USA.
No, the U.S. delegation entered and it was jeered with, the whistles and boos and, not a nice warm greeting. Meanwhile, when the Mexican president, came in, gets thunderous applause and cheers from the stadium and stuff like that.
Yeah, same with Cuba. So a little bit of hostility there between our friends to the south. But once the competition began, the anti-U.S. sentiment was impossible to miss, from jeering crowds to horrible officiating. Take this one as an example. American sprinter Pam Giles accidentally won the women's 200 meters before being shown a photo finish that proved otherwise. Bill, this was a real weird one.
Yeah, but the thing is, she was going against her teammate, Shonda Cheeseborough. They said that the word did not reach the judges until the medals had been awarded, that there was actually the opposite result. Cheeseborough won, not Giles. But they ended up finding that out when they went to a TV interview. One of the guys from CBS showed them a picture of the finish, showed the girls a picture of the finish. Giles lifted the gold medal from around her neck and exchanged it to Cheeseboro silver. So they got it completely mixed up. And the poor Giles, what a good kid. She's what, 16 years old. Once she left the stadium, she was sad, but the next day she came to terms with the result. She said, it's okay, she said, since Cheese and I are from the same country and we both get credit for setting the American record, which was at that time 22.8. Just terrible, terrible.
Just imagine that you're 16 years old, you've just won gold, and they tell you after you've been on the ceremony, sorry, look at this picture. And what does this 16-year-old do? She takes her medal off and hands it to her teammate. No fuss, no argument, just a matter of fact act of integrity. I mean, you want to talk about a champion. This Giles, Pam Giles, man, really, really a lot of respect for her. Usually in these games, there's like a controversial moment, but this one just had one after another.
And in this one, this is the women's long jump. Martha Watson of the U.S., she did an amazing first leap, over 21 feet. Then came up Cuba's Anna Alexander. She was the 11th of 12 qualifiers. She produced a jump that showed just over 20 feet. But the crowd, that wasn't good enough for them. They railed at the officials, and after a few moments, the board was cleared and a new mark substituted, 21 feet 9, a Pan-American record for Anna Alexander. Here comes the back end of it. But because of the rule prohibiting competitors from the pit area, Watson could not verify her opponent's mark. Later in the village cafeteria, Alexander was asked by another athlete if she had actually jumped 21 feet 9 inches. No, she said flatly without apology. It was probably around 21 feet. Yeah. But she still won it. Just cheating all the way.
They basically just gave her an extra foot almost.
Yep.
I mean, they weren't.
How do you rail an official to change something that you can see it on the board?
Discus thrower Julian Morrison got to use his own personal discus in violation of the rules, conveniently edging out his American rival. And get this, U.S. athletes even getting physically assaulted during the 20-kilometer walk as Mexican spectators spat on them and blocked the course. So I don't know what the hell was going on. We were not welcomed back down in at these Mexican-American games 50 years ago. So.
But there was also, did you read the safety part of it? That one of the guys, Cuba's Silvio Leonard, he crossed the finish line as he was running. His ham had a little hamstring twinge, but then he lost control and he plunged 15 feet into the concrete moat that circles the stadium. And that almost happened to Pam Giles, too, in her run. She nearly followed Leonard into the moat, but officials finally decided to put up a protective barricade. Jeez. You're not supposed to be falling in moats when you're at a games.
Crazy. Just a crazy week down in Mexico. All right, let's talk a little baseball. And they're doing everything they can. The biggest thing in the World Series 50 years ago was the 5-day forecast because it was raining like cats and dogs back there. The series is 1-1 heading to Cincinnati. And in Game 3, all hell breaks loose when umpire Larry Barnett's no call on Ed Armbrister's collision with catcher Carlton Fisk turned a 10th inning bunt into a Reds win. Bill, what happened?
Well, he bunted, and then he stood in front of Carlton Fisk as Fisk tried to leap for the ball and get him out. He stood there. We watched the play, Scott. Armbrister bunts, and then he takes a step, and then he just sort of crouches in front of Fisk. But Fisk is not called out because Barnett said he ruled it that it was simply a collision. An interference only happens when the batter intentionally gets in the way of the fielder. That's what Armbrister did. Yeah.
I remember that play. I remember seeing that play before. I don't know if I saw it live or what, but I remember so Fisk is trying to make the throw to second and he throws it into center field. So, instead of, you could have even called a double play.
Yep.
Instead of, 2 outs, nobody on, it was runners on, I think second and third. And I think Joe Morgan comes up and wins it.
He did.
Right after that with a long fly ball that turned into a single. So aftermath, Fisk and teammates erupted, calling for only the best umpires in future series. Even Bill Lee said he'd have Van Gogh'd Barnett's ear off. So nobody's happy about, well, at least the Red Sox fans are not happy about how that went down. Despite the outrage, the Sox rebounded, though, the next night behind El Tiante.
They pitched another complete game. The Red Sox won the game 5-4. He wasn't as dominant in his first game, but he's still pitching complete games. I think in every start in the postseason, he's pitched a complete game so far.
Mark, imagine this. He threw 163 pitches in winning for, and that's the funny thing. I mean, nobody would come even close to that now, but he gave up 4 runs. Now he gave up early and then he really settled in, but 163 pitches. That's like twice what these guys are throwing now.
Yeah, I mean, I'm surprised his arm didn't fall off because if you throw that many pitches, that's going to happen, right? But back in those days, you tear your ligament, you just keep pitching. That's, no one's like going, oh, my arm hurts, I need to be examined, I need to take a year off. They just pitched through injuries.
They did. Not as good. So the series is 2-2 heading to game 5. The Reds bounce back with Tony Perez 2-homer, 4 RBI game in that game 5. So it's now 3-2 heading back to the weekend, and rain gets in the way, washing out any chance of playing games 6 and 7. So that's why this magazine does not have the end of the World Series. 5 days in between game 5 and game 6 because of the rain.
Right. They had a travel day, and then there was 3 days of heavy rain in Boston. So basically the pitching staff's got 4 days of rest. But think about it. You play a game on October 16th, and then you don't play again until October 21st. And they lost the weekend. They lost Saturday and Sunday, prime viewing hours. Because I remember game 6 and 7, the famous Carlton Fisk homer game. And that was played like on a Tuesday or Wednesday night. I remember it was the middle of the week the game was going on.
Right. Yeah, imagine
But that game at least was played at night, not during the day.
Makes sense. A weekday night game. All right, let's talk a little kicking. They're having a field day. Kickers are better than ever now in both college and the NFL. But 50 years ago, a 40-yard field goal was quite a kick. But that was changing 50 years ago, Mark. And part of the reason why is all the different kinds of styles of kicking.
Right. So kicking used to be all straight, what they call straight leg kickers, where you just run straight at the ball and kick it. Like the NFL, the last straight leg kicker was, I believe, Mosley of the Redskins. And he was kicking that way into the early 80s. But I think Jan Stenerud began it, the soccer style kicker, the forward kicker, the soccer style kicker, and that overtook the sport. Now you have nothing but soccer style kickers. Though it's interesting, in this article, they talk about the Air Force kicker, Dave Lawson, who had kicked a 62-yarder earlier that year. And he is a straight leg kicker. If you look at the picture in the magazine, he's kicking the ball with a straight leg. But what's so interesting to me is the fact that they were talking about how there's so much more kicking. And I guess in 1959, they sort of widened the goalpost or stuff. So I guess making it a little bit easier. But, back then, I think the record was 45 field goals that Dave Lawson kicked in 4 years. And what's the record now? I think it's 97. Cole Tracy, I think, kicked 97 field goals across his career. But some of them came in Division III. But, 96, I think 97. Christopher Dunn, I think, from 2008 to 22 had 97 field goals. So it's doubled, field goal kicking now, you're expected to make the kick. You're not expected to miss the kick.
Yep, absolutely. I mean, now inside of 50, I mean, it's got to be 85%. And outside of 50, guys just drilling it from all over the place. Bill, once mocked as oddballs or foreigners with funny shoes, kickers were now winning games in the final seconds, and a lot of these guys were characters.
Yeah, E.O. Wheeler. He was a Georgia Tech kicker who recently passed away. He had a reputation. He would oversleep. He'd miss buses. He'd disappear from practice to call his girlfriend or get his car fixed. But one time in 1973, the coaches yelled for Wheeler to get in there and for a field goal try. There was no response. They searched for him and found him. He was asleep on the bench. That's normal stuff. But when he did wake up, he went and kicked a 55-yarder, then a Georgia Tech record.
Yeah, I wonder why.
Nowadays, someone sleeping on the bench, there goes your scholarship, or
Yeah, you're done.
That back in the day, I was like, that's just EO, man. Let him be.
These guys were also athletes. This Lawson guy was a linebacker and a boxer. He was
Yeah.
more than just a kicker. Um, Penn State's Chris Barr was a professional soccer player,
Right.
proving that the era of the frail, little nervous kickers was over.
Yeah.
They said in the end of the article, maybe someday soon a 70-yard field goal could be in our future. Well, I wouldn't say
Almost.
soon, but it did happen this past preseason when Cam Little of the Jaguars hit one from 70 yards. I remember as a kid, one of the most amazing records to me as a kid was Tom Dempsey's
Right.
63-yard field goal.
With half
I
a
mean,
foot.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
But-
With a club foot,
but-
that's right.
That was kicked in 1970. If it had been kicked a few years later, he wouldn't have been able to do it because that time the goalposts were in the front of the end zone. So he literally kicked the ball from his own 37-yard line.
And I think that won the game.
It did. Last play.
Let's talk a little pro basketball preview. The 75-76 season opened in chaos, a whirlwind of trades, lawsuits, holdouts, instability. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar has left snowy Milwaukee for sunny Los Angeles, back where he went to college. George McGinnis finally awarded to Philadelphia after a legal tug of war in the offseason. Dan Issel landed in Denver as the ABA's top draw. So lots of moving parts here. You got the NBA and ABA both with new commissioners. Larry O'Brien, who would go on to be an incredibly successful commissioner during once the NBA just exploded. When you win the championship now, you win the
Larry O'Brien Trophy.
That's right.
Brian.
And then the ABA commissioner, Dave DeBusschere, that job did not last very long.
But Dave DeBusschere is great. Dave DeBusschere was not only played for the Knicks, but he was also a pitcher for the Chicago White Sox. He was a two-sport star. Not star, but two-sport athlete.
Yeah, and legit.
You play in the
Yeah.
major leagues and basketball, you're a star.
He
Yep.
he threw
Did better than Danny
shutouts,
Ainge.
and he was a good pitcher.
Yes, he
Before we look ahead, let's look back at the Warriors winning one of the more shocking NBA titles of all time. Big underdogs against the Bullets. Rick Barry and the Dubs swept the Bullets in 4 in a complete stunner. Barry said, "We made reality out of fantasy. This is the type of season you only dream about." So Warriors shocked everyone in winning that. And we spoke with Rick Barry last year about this team and that shocking NBA championship that they had.
And just the fact that Washington had a double-digit lead 3 times in the series, and the Warriors kept coming back. You know, because Washington was arguably the best team in basketball last year.
Yeah,
Right. And where did they play basketball at?
the Cow Palace.
Caps.
Yeah. I don't know, man. It's like you're the best team in the NBA, but you're going to play in a place named after rodeos.
Yep. And he said
But
it
you know,
felt like it too.
That 59 and 23 record, that was the most until the Warriors, beat that by 8 games in 2014, 2015.
You know what I like, though? This article is written by our buddy, Mr. Five-timer, Curry Kirkpatrick.
Curry. Yep.
But hey, one thing I want to say about the Lakers and Kareem. So this is Kareem's first year with the Lakers. So you're going to think, man, they're going to go play for a championship. No, they didn't even make the playoffs his first year with the team.
No.
They were 40-42.
But didn't he win the MVP that year too?
He did.
I think he won the MVP the first 2 years with the Lakers, wasn't it?
And hey, and I know you're poo-pooing my uniforms, but what does all sports teams do now? They have like 8 different uniforms. Everybody, you watch a sporting event, especially basketball, and you have to watch it for a few minutes to figure out who's playing because everybody's wearing a different uniform.
That's really smart.
I'm not a fan of that.
No, I don't mind if you have alternate uniforms that are similar color scheme to yours. But when your alternate uniforms are completely different color schemes, you're like, wait, what team is this?
Crazy. As for the cover guy, it was quite an offseason for George McGinnis, which we've talked about quite a bit on this show. But to recap, the pride of Indianapolis, a hometown hero who had dominated at every level of basketball from high school to the ABA's Indiana Pacers, deeply rooted in the city's small town rhythms, devoted to his family and community, but his talent had outgrown the local stage and drawn by the big bucks in the big cities. He initially wanted to join the New York Knicks, who promised him media exposure and all the riches that came with New York. Only problem was, even though New York signed him to a deal, the Philadelphia Sixers held his NBA rights. So a lot of court battles, and Knicks got in trouble for doing that, and he ends up signing with the 76ers. He dominates the ABA, sharing MVP honors with Julius Erving his last season and leading the Pacers deep into the playoffs. But once he got to Philadelphia, he still was really good, all-star player. They weren't that good yet until Dr. J joined them the next year, and that's when the Sixers really became a force in the NBA.
The interesting thing about McGinnis, he was on as many all-star teams in the ABA as he was in the NBA. He was in 3 all-star teams in the ABA from 73 to 75 with the Pacers, and then 3 all-star teams with the Sixers. Well, the first 2 were with the Sixers, and then 1 with the Denver Nuggets. I always think of McGinnis as an Indiana Pacer, even though he played the first 4 years of his career and the last 2 years of his career with the Pacers. He had a long span with the Sixers and the Nuggets in between, but I always think of him as Indiana Pacer.
He was traded to Denver in 1978. One of the guys they got back was Bobby Jones, who helped the Sixers as the defensive stopper win the finals in 82-83, the faux years.
Yep.
So in a sense, McGinnis helped him out in many other ways.
As we mentioned, the Lakers now have Kareem, but Kareem wasn't enough. It wouldn't be until 4 years later when Magic got there that they really turned into the Showtime Lakers. But Kareem changed the course of this version of the Lakers. That was the beginning of that transition to that next part of the Lakers' storied history. And then Magic gets there, and all is well in Inglewood. Portland is hoping for more out of Bill Walton, and they would soon be rewarded for that faith. We mentioned Golden State won last year. It wouldn't be until Steph Curry arrived that they would win again 40 years later. So although they did have the best record in the NBA that year, they were 59-23 before Phoenix upended them in the Western Conference Finals.
But Scott, weren't you a diehard Warriors fan? So you basically were 40 years in the mix with these not doing anything.
You know, other than the Mullen, Richmond, Tim Hardaway teams, which were really fun, but not, not really overly championship competitive. They had some playoff teams. I've suffered through a lot of 18 to 24 win seasons.
They had cool uniforms though. Those the Golden Gate Bridge with inside the basketball, on those blue and yellow uniforms.
Yep.
It's a cool logo.
Yep. Said the city on it. The Midwest is a mess. How about this? The Bucks would end up winning their division with a record of 38-44. So now you get a playoff team that might get there with a under 500 record, but this team actually won their division, being 6 games under 500. And in the Atlantic, the Sixers have added McGinnis, high school phenom Daryl Dawkins, who, Billy, he's got a couple of nicknames.
They're good stuff. 19 years old. We all know about Chocolate Thunder, but he also had Sir Slam, Zendoken, the Mad Dunker, Dunk You Very Much, Candy Slam, Sir Dunk, Dunk It, Pure Pleasure, Cool Breeze, Dr. Jam, and Demon of Destin. Man, they don't have good nicknames anymore, and he had 9 of them.
Man. And he's the reason why they have the springs on the rims.
That's right. He broke a belt board, didn't he?
He would break them, and back then it would take like an hour to replace the entire. They had to replace the entire backboard, all of it. He would just bring the whole thing down. He was so strong. But as always, the team to beat are the Celtics, John Havlicek and Dave Cowens, and now they've added Charlie Scott to the team. In the ABA, what would turn out to be the final season for this league, the Nuggets had the best record in the league last year under Larry Brown and have added David Thompson, Bill, out of North Carolina State to the mix.
Yeah, and it's good to see that the Hawks couldn't sign either him or Marvin Webster. So they both went to the NBA, and then the Hawks got an aging Connie Hawkins. There you go. And Bill Willoughby. Don't want to forget that. The Hawks seem like they've been this for 50 years.
But the Hawks are on the cover of this SI. If you look really closely,
yes.
Are they in the back in
And
that
those
little
red and
uniform?
white uniforms.
There you go. There you go, getting burned.
You're seeing red.
Perpetually making mistakes.
the San Antonio Spurs have the Iceman, George Gervin. I got to imagine that, Mark, at one point he was your favorite player.
I'm trying to remember who my favorite player wasn't. Gervin on the Spurs. Who did I like? Swinader had gone to UCLA. God, who was my favorite player on the Spurs? That's a really good question. I liked it when they had Bert Everett. But what's interesting about their roster is they and the Nets like made some 8-player trade. And basically they had the worst defense in the league, which is hard to think of. I always think of defense with the Spurs, but back then they didn't. And the coach, Bob Bass, said that if our team was defending the Alamo, he said the Mexicans would have won it in 24 seconds. Overrun it.
Utah Stars are building around a 19-year-old kid by the name of Moses Malone, but just 16 games into the season, that franchise would fold. Back east, more turmoil. The Kentucky Colonels, the defending champs, and they sell Dan Issel to the Baltimore Claws. Well, that team folds before the season even starts. Issel would end up in Denver, where he had a long career, the second leading scorer in team history, although in about a week from now, Nikola Jokic will pass him on that list. So Dan Issel, one of the more underrated superstar players in basketball history. If you want to talk NBA basketball from 50 years ago, there's a very short list of people to call who saw it all. Our guest is one of our favorites here on the Past Our Prime podcast, and talking to this man about hoops is kind of like asking Moses to give us his take on the 10 Commandments. I mean, you go right to the source, right? We're talking 1975 hoops, and that means we're talking with Mr. Bob Ryan. Hey, Bob, how are you this morning?
Hey, thank you for the flattering intro. Yes, I'm fine.
No burning bushes for you today. Hey, Bob, 1975, it's a strange time in the NBA because the ABA is still kind of hanging on by a thread, but many of the players from the ABA are jumping ship and heading to the more established league, including the man on the cover of this issue, George McGinnis. Tell our listeners how good a player George was.
Well, you've come to a interesting observer. He's not my favorite player. George McGinnis was enormously skilled, 6'8", with I think Karl Malone body, pretty analogous, but but he's a ball handler. He fancied himself as a ball handler, believe me, and he was a flamboyant player who managed not to play for Bob Knight. That would have been an interesting clash, but went to IU, and he was a wonderful player for the Pacers. He jumps to the 76ers for the 75-76 season, and he takes it pretty much by storm. He averaged his first year 23 points, and he was 12 rebounds, 6 in the league, and the team had a 12-game improvement that year. They went from 34-46 to 46-36, and of course a year later he gets a new teammate called Juliue Erving. But for the moment, he was the man. Philly was enraptured by George McGinnis. So now, as time went on, George McGinnis, much like another ABA stalwart, David Thompson, was exposed. He was exposed for a guy who never learned how to play basketball, but relied strictly on his talent. And when his physical skills started to diminish, he didn't have plan B. Then the worst thing was he developed a free throw phobia, and as a result, stopped doing one of his major assets, going to the hoop. He didn't want to go to the free throw line. He didn't want to be embarrassed. And so his career petered out not before Philly went to the finals, in 77 with he and Dr. J and Doug Collins and Darryl Dawkins, and they lost. They were heavily favored over the Trailblazers. But anyway, he made a big impact initially. There's no question about it.
Tell me a little bit more about this free throw shooting. Did he become like a Shaq type free throw shooter where he did a case of the yips?
Yes. he didn't want to go there. He lost it, and it was like, baseball, that the throwing disease. He didn't. It's happened. He's not the first, not the only one, but he developed a phobia, and he doesn't want to go to the line. And so his game was exposed in a sense, and it didn't end the way it should have.
So I'm a huge fan of the ABA. As a kid, I loved the ABA because to me it was this mystery league. It wasn't on TV. You didn't know much about it. They had the red, white, and blue ball. It was neat. But so this merger, this is the last season where they're going to have an NBA and an ABA. But from what I understand, the merger talks were going on for years. What was the reaction when people said these two leagues were going to merge and they were going to absorb four teams into the league?
I think the initial reaction was the NBA people were smug and saying, "Well, now this is important. It's good. It's good for business. Naturally, they were in so many stories about guys being hidden and all this stuff, and it was hilarious, and they were an interesting competitor, but it was great to have the idea of the merger. The merger was consummated, by the way, in Hyannis, Massachusetts, in the 76 winter meetings and summer meetings. I mean, and I was there, and we were anxious to see how it was going to materialize, and I think that, but people didn't want to acknowledge. I was one of the NBA, diehards, if you will. I remember the first time the Celtics went to play the Nets in an exhibition season when they were having those exhibition games, and I thought, well, they're going to show them who's boss, and I thought Cowens would particularly show them who's boss, and the Nets won the game, although it was because Rick Barry hit a 3-pointer, and but they sobered up the NBA. They won a lot of those games and I know the Celtics engaged in exhibitions with the Carolina Cougars, among others, it was so we were all looking forward to that 76-77 season to see how it's going to shake out.
So how did they pick the four teams? And then I guess maybe you answered the question too. Were people skeptical if you were successful in the ABA, that doesn't mean you're going to be successful in the NBA?
Oh yeah, no question. And but how they pick them was, it was about finances, and we all know the story. The four teams that came in, and then how the Silver brothers were bought off in St. Louis, and therefore they had this wonderful deal with the NBA that they cashed in on for decades. In lieu of their getting the franchise. But that was lots of kinds of backdoor dealings, naturally. But so the four teams came in, and we learned, we learned, and of course the thing the ABA can point to in that 1977 All-Star game, of the 24 players, 10 of the players were ABA expatriate players, and that got people's attention.
Yeah, I mean, that the deal that the Spirit of St. Louis made, I used to see one of the owners in Malibu all the time. And to me, it's the greatest business decision that's ever been made in sports history.
Nothing comparable to it in this context at all. And so they got the last laugh in that regard financially. But the Spirits of St. Louis were an interesting team, with Marvin Barnes, et cetera, and young Bob Costas is their play-by-play guy. Mm-hmm. But they stole Don Chaney from the Celtics. I that's the way I put it. But he went there to get paid, but he eventually came back. But they were a fascinating team.
But for people that don't know, the deal was, instead of taking money up front, they took a percentage of future NBA grosses, and the NBA thought, oh yeah, that's a better deal for us. Wrong.
Absolutely turned out to be wrong, and they got the last laugh. No doubt.
But staying on the ABA subject, Bob, how excited were you, or just the anticipation of getting Dr. J in the league? What was the thought about him playing against NBA players?
Oh, well, that was, I personally was very excited because I go back to him at UMass. And I can remember when he was a freshman, reasonably unheralded, by the way. He wasn't a big known scholastic commodity outside of Long Island. And a guy I knew, a friend at UMass, kept telling me about, we got this freshman, Juliue Erving. And, the first time I ever saw him play as a sophomore, at UMass. Of course, in those days, people understand now he couldn't play until he was a sophomore. That was the way the world was. He comes to Boston College, and I watched him play, and I was impressed, but not dazzled. Then I looked at the score sheet when the game was over. 26 points, 18 rebounds. It was kind of a subtle greatness, And here's the one thing I thought when he came into the ABA. The one thing I promise is he'll rebound. And I hadn't taken into consideration that not being able to dunk and therefore go to the finish up his drives the way he wanted to was going to have a significant impact, improvement, help him improvement going into the NBA. He did stuff in the ABA he couldn't do in college and the rest of his career. So, but I knew about him. I was happy to welcome him into the NBA.
And there's some people that say the ABA were his glory days. And then when he got to the NBA, sort of went down just a bit, that people didn't get to see the greatness of Dr. J. You saw it. What was he like to see in person?
I don't know how much better. I mean, I know he entered the NBA as an ABA champion. I know that. And he was the best player in the 76 Nets team. Okay. I understand that. But the guy I saw in the NBA, he was pretty damn good. That's for sure. The game, but I know why people said that he was. I think it's something of an exaggeration. We saw lots of evidence of the flamboyance of Juliue Erving, so I'm not going to go buy into that one too much.
Bob, the ABA at this time is hanging by a thread. Besides McGinnis jumping ship, Dan Issel of the Kentucky Colonels, who just won it all, is sold to Baltimore, a team that folds before they ever play a regular season game. He ends up in Denver. Moses Malone is leading the Utah Stars, but 16 games into their season, they fold. It seemed pretty obvious, or so it seems looking back at least, that the league wasn't going to survive. Was that the perception back then?
Yeah, I pretty much think so. And the merger made perfect sense for them, that's for sure, that they get welcomed into the NBA. Right. The numbers weren't there. They never did have a decent TV contract that I can recall. You never saw them play. I remember once going to do a feature story for the Globe, in which I would I went spent 10. I saw 10 games and 10 nights in 10 different cities in both leagues across the country, and I broke it off into an ABA story, and I talked about how they were so out of sight. And I compared it to, at that point, the civil war in Ethiopia and Eritrea. I mean, you heard about this, you know anything about it. So I try to enlighten the NBA audience as to what some of the things are, who some of the people were that was going on in the ABA. And I do, here's an anecdote for you. I go to Utah, and I'm sorry, the coach, and he says to me, Larry Brown. Okay, so they're playing Denver. And Larry Brown says to me, Bob, this kid is the greatest offensive rebounder I've ever seen in my life. He was 19 years old. And I'm the president of the Paul Silas fan club. And his call, his great calling card, among other things, was offensive rebounding. And I went, come on, Larry, sober up, Then I saw him play. Oh, okay. And to this day, if you're going to list the number of great offensive rebounders in the history of the league, you got to start with Moses Malone.
Yep. And see, I was foreshadowing that we were going to talk about the 10 Commandments. I just was talking about Moses Malone, not the great Moses prophet.
You mentioned Charlie Scott, and so he goes from the ABA to the Phoenix Suns, and then they make the big deal with the Celtics involving Paul Westphal.
Yeah.
Explain wasn't that a trade that actually was a win-win for both teams, which is so rare in sports?
Well, it certainly turned out to be a win-win in the sense that the Celtics got an instant dividend. They won a championship with Charlie, and the Suns got a player who gave them 5-6 spectacular years and played his way got him to one finals and played his way into the Hall of Fame, and was as good a guard there was in the league in the late 70s. It's an interesting trade. And from the Celtic viewpoint, I have pretty much had this supposition of mine confirmed by one who knows. that Red Auerbach recognized that Paul Westphal was going to have to play more. He had played his way after 3 years, and he had been instrumental in helping him win the championship in '74 with a great performance in Game 7 against the Bucks. And you couldn't suppress him much longer, okay? And this meant that Don Chaney had left. Okay, there's a vacancy, but they felt that JoJo White's ego was so fragile that he wouldn't welcome Westphal as an equitable partner. That the nights when now Westphal would get 30 and JoJo would get 10, JoJo wouldn't like that. But he would respect Charlie Scott as a peer. Now that sounds like a wild argument, except that I've had it confirmed. And so they were able to make that trade on that basis.
Can you, for people that don't know Charlie Scott, I mean, he was a trailblazer. I believe he was the first Black scholarship player ever at the University of North Carolina. But talk about his impact as an NBA and ABA player.
Charlie was a very dynamic player, a 6'5" guard with ball handling skills and bravado. He just had a swagger. He had a swagger, and he took the ABA by storm. When he went joined the league, and he was a wonderful player. But he had, I don't know, he had his personal. Charlie was an interesting guy, not a bad guy at all, but an interesting guy. I used to say about Charlie Scott, if you ask him for the time of day, he would give you the political history of Switzerland. And there was no subject on which Charlie Scott didn't feel that he was an expert. He was not that easy to get along with in a big picture for some teams, and he came to Boston and he kind of melted in, better than a lot of people thought he would that year. And they got a championship out of Charlie Scott. And by the way, to give him his due, in Boston, in 1976, they won 3 6-game series against, and in each of the 6 games, Buffalo, Cleveland, and Phoenix, Charlie Scott came up big in the 6th game, the concluding game. He came up big in all 3 6 games. He was absolutely a clutch guy when they most needed him. So I always remember that about Charlie as a Celtic.
You mentioned him just a minute or two ago. A guy that I really loved growing up was JoJo White. What was it about his game that fit so perfectly with the Celtics?
Well, he was a skilled player. I mean, he was not. I think he was more of a hybrid guard, old-fashioned guard. You could call him a point guard. He could play the role, but he was more of a scorer, I think, than a feeder. But and he was an interesting player. He was a casual player. Never seemed to breathe a sweat in his life, And we used to kid about JoJo. He's never felt the floor. He didn't know what the floor feels like, and he would defend himself by saying, "I play hard," quote, "within my style," unquote. So you had to live with JoJo. JoJo was a very good offensive player. When he joined the Celtics, he joined a team of veterans, and they had their ways about them. And Tom Heinsohn, they thought, coddled him, and that they forgave his somewhat indifferent defense in the beginning. He got better as time went on, but and Tommy said, "I need that scoring from this kid, and I'll worry about the other part." And anyway, it caused a little bit of a friction between the veterans and Heinsohn, and eventually with me, because I defended their point of view, and Tommy didn't like it. That's another story for another day. That's fine. But anyway, JoJo, he developed. I remember circa after they won in '76, and now things are churning around. But in '77, the Celtics. I remember talking to Havlicek and saying, JoJo's become a consummate pro. JoJo matured year by year, And speaking of, in '76, in the famous triple overtime game against Phoenix, Game 5, he had 33, had 15 in the fourth quarter in overtimes, and was instrumental. Beautiful, funny shot, funny release. He had a screwball. The ball, he threw it like a pitcher throwing a screwball, but it went in, and he deservedly found his way into the Hall of Fame.
Well, you sort of the way this team sounds. You had Charlie Scott, which might have rubbed some people the wrong way. JoJo White had sort of a fragile ego when it come to guys like Westfall. How was Tommy Heinsohn able to bring this team together to get them another title?
Well, Tommy fancied himself as a good psychologist, and sometimes he overplayed his hand. Okay, but he understood. He just understood things, and he certainly didn't lack in any self-confidence or belief. And he always knew he had the backing of Red Auerbach too, whatever he chose to do, and that's important, of course. And but Tommy was a good coach until he started to overcoach. I really believe that. I'm sorry, but he did. And sometimes he needed to step back a few times as that team gelled. But it's just you gotta. And I don't care what sport you're talking about, and what people have to understand that X's and O's or strategy are only the beginning. It's ultimately it's all about people management. People handling, and ultimately and Tommy was good at it for the most part, but I do think that he did get a little too didactic, as sure we will. I know Cowens started to rebel against it, and I'll say this: and when they won in '74, everybody was happy. But they won in '76. I can tell you, I covered it from start to finish, and it was not a feeling of joy; it was a feeling of relief that the season was over. He had kind of worn out his welcome with some of the veterans.
First of all, how did he do that? And what does that mean in layman's terms, overcoach?
It meant that you don't have to have lengthy practices and talk and act as if they needed to start from A when you could start from L or M. I think, and unfortunately he fell prey to that. He didn't change up enough in that regard. And it did bother the veterans, frankly.
Yeah, one thing that always bothers me, Bob, is when people say, "Oh, look at Phil Jackson. Look at the talent he had. Anyone could do that. Look at what this." And yeah, the X's and O's, maybe they could all do kind of the same thing. But you're right. They become a psychologist. They become the parent. They become all these other emotional things to keep these guys on the same page. That's what made The Last Dance what it was. Phil Jackson keeping these guys all on the same page one last time.
The great comparison and NBA annals is in fact Phil Jackson with what he was able to do in Chicago, particularly, and maybe not as successful in LA when you think about it, and Red Auerbach. Red Auerbach certainly was a quality strategist, but his great skill was he knew that he had a team of 12 separate personalities, and he was able to relate to the different personalities on the team, starting with the most important one, William F. Russell. And Russell has told many people, including myself personally, that he would not have been the same player with the same amount of success in the NBA for any other coach in the league, because Red understood who he was and who he wasn't, and acted accordingly. And he had a different approach for Tom Heinsohn, a different approach for Bob Cousy, Bill Sharman, et cetera, Frank Ramsey. And this enabled them to have the great reign that they had. And Jackson similarly, had that kind of pupil skill that was necessary. So, yeah, that it is important. And this is one of the great truths of all pro sport coaching. Right now, what team you're talking about. So, is that people management is every bit is probably more important than simple strategy.
We know that the big redhead Bill Walton finished his career in style with the Celtics, but he had kind of a disappointing rookie season in Portland. Going into year 2, was the talk that he would get better, or were there whispers that, without Wooden babying him, maybe he wouldn't be the player people thought he'd be in the NBA?
Well, he wasn't fully healthy either, and at that time and beginning. You saw flashes of the Walton that you had seen in college, and all. But Lenny, I thought, Lenny, he liked Lenny Wilkens, as far as I know. and I think Lenny understood what he had there. It just took a while for Bill to, and Bill fully didn't show the world how good he really was in the NBA until that 76, 77 season. And, he was the MVP. And then this next year, he was even better. And they were 50-10 when he got hurt. And then by the time the playoffs came, I think they were missing 3 starters, and they had no shot of repeating. That's one of the great what ifs of the NBA ever, is if he could have stayed healthy and if they could have stayed healthy, how many championships they might have won instead of just the one. But I think Bill's stories were about injury, really, more than anything, not about inability to, relate to a coach or a coach relate to him.
Going back to the merger, is the 3-point shot maybe one of the most significant rule changes to the game in its history?
The 3-point shot is, you can say it's dividing line in NBA history now, as time is revealing to us right now. And, now you prepare yourself for my little rant and I'll get on.
Okay.
I think it's the worst thing that's ever happened to basketball. I think it's distorted the game at every level, and it's irrevocable. Now, think about what it is. People don't think about what it is. It is the gimmick of a promoter. The 3-point shot may have been discussed in fandom, loose, not important terms, speculation over the years. I don't remember it as a basketball fan in the 50s at all. But in 1961, Abe Saperstein came up with the American Basketball League. He was going to compete with the NBA. This is the Abe Saperstein, impresario of the Globetrotters. And he was a promoter at heart. And he said, I need a gimmick. And he had 2 gimmicks. Oh, he had 1 gimmick. That was this. And he introduced the 3-point shot. The league folded after a year and a half. They got 1 champion at Kansas City. But the Eastern League picked it up. And the Eastern League at that time was the number 2 basketball league in the world. And that's where you went if you didn't play in the NBA. You played in the Eastern League. And they picked it up, and it caught on. And then in 1966, the ABA came into existence, and they needed gimmicks, and they came up with 2, the 3-point shot and the red, white, and blue basketball. Okay, now, when the NBA instituted the 3-point shot in 1979-80, it's almost as if no one knew what to do with it. It was almost toxic for some people. I've done this research. Just fast forward, go into the books and look up 84-85 season, 5 years into the league, and see how few 3-point shot attempts there were on the part of so many teams. Teams were not taking even 100 a year in an 82-game season. Certain teams, okay? It didn't resonate the way. So we have to figure out how it has all gotten to where we are. Well, the ultimate turning point is the existence on this earth of a young man named Steph Curry. I mean, he has completely taken it to another level and inspired, the world, if you will. But it's the currency now, and I call it the Darryl-morphication of basketball. The whole thing about 3 is better than 2, and the worst thing in basketball is the long 2, and blah blah blah. And it's gospel now. It's gospel, and I know how sick I am of seeing a 7-foot guy get a pass 2 feet from the basket. Instead of taking a little jump hook, he throws it out to the corner for a guy to clank up another 3. That's the game. And it is. Now the most significant. It's tied 24-second clock. You gotta say that's a turning point, no question. 1954-55. Fine, I'll give you that. But since then, the second biggest turning point and crucial turning point is the 3-point shot.
Rains don't fly, questions fly, lightning strikes as answers try, buzzers wreak chaos in the air, trivia time, truth or dare.
So true or false, Shaquille O'Neal and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar never hit a 3-point shot in their career.
Well, Kareem didn't, I'm sure. And I would bet that Shaquille didn't, but I can't be sure.
Okay, so apparently both of them hit 1 3-point shot in their career. Okay. Shaq was 1 for 22, and the one he hit was like a bank shot at the buzzer. And sure. Kareem, half his career, there was no 3-point shot. The other half, 1 for 18. So each of them had one in their
I'm
career.
actually surprised that Kareem lowered himself to that level. But
I'm guessing it was like a blowout or something,
yeah,
or maybe a
or
shot clock.
the end of the. But he wouldn't be the guy who think to end up with the ball at the end of the period either, which is when somebody were taken. That's interesting.
Talking with Bob Ryan of the Boston Globe. And of course, Bob was most known for his coverage of the Celtics and the 317 books that he wrote on them. But I'm going to throw you a bit of a curveball here, Bob. October of 1975, we've been talking about this a lot on the show. And for most people, the greatest World Series ever played. Reds lead the series 3-2 after a week of rain in Boston. Game 6 at Fenway. Where were you?
In the press box, and the funny thing is that I was part of the coverage. My job, and that even though I was still the full-time NBA writer, this is the other world of journalism that barely exists now. I was still part of the coverage of the home games at the World Series. Okay, and my job was the visiting locker room. So anyway, Game 6, this is days before we had cell phones or even phones at writers' seats. And I had a phone call, they told me, from the office. So I had to go back to where I could pick up the phone, and I did what I did. And now on my way back to my seat, I realized I don't want to miss anything. I was sitting in the auxiliaries press box in the third baseline, so I dipped in right behind home plate, behind the scoring table, the guy, to see the beginning of that inning, and that's how I saw Fisk's home run. I had Fisk's home run, viewpoint excellent from behind home plate, but I could have missed it. After all that, could have missed it. Game 6, remarkable game. All kinds of wonderful stuff happens, we know, and great what ifs, and it was electric. And Smith, Fisk's home run. So I interviewed Pat Darcy after the game. He was terrific. Pat Darcy suffered all our foolish inquisitors. He was a gentleman. He owned up. He made life easy for us. It was. I commend him.
Let me we had him on our show. We had Bill Lee on our show recently. What was he like back in the day?
The same as he is at 77 today. He's irrepressible, full of humor, full of opinion, and needs to be the center of attention. I can tell you this. There's almost he has an incessant desire to be the center of attention, and anywhere he goes. But he's amusing. He's smart. He was a delight to have around. I mean, I covered the team full time in 1977, and I got some good quotes out of him. I can tell you that. And he's still. We see him around, and he's never changed. Absolutely never changed. He's just completely as unapologetic about everything as he's ever been.
He earned that nickname.
He did. He did, and he cherished it. And he's talk about the cornflake powders and all that. But he was he was a complete character. And for 4 or 5 years, an excellent left-hand pitcher, won 17 games 3 years in a row, and pitched 2 outstanding games in the World Series in '75 and didn't win either of them because of just he threw a bad pitch to Tony Perez. We know that.
But hey, I just wanted to go really quickly back to the '75 series. Do you consider that the greatest World Series matchup of all time? And as Boston fans, the curse is still going. How devastating was that for Red Sox fans to come so close and yet miss out?
Well, this is okay. This was the third time since starting in 1946 they got to a Game 7. Okay, 46 they lose to the Cardinals in the game they were leading. In 67 they were no hoper. Lonborg was pitching on 2 days rest, and Gibson was pitching on standard 3, and Gibson had it and Lonborg didn't. But this series, the vaunted Big Red Machine, I think they were quite favored. They were not heavily, but they were favored, and we had some excellent games leading up to it. Was it the greatest of all time? It's a very proud conceit here to say that, And okay, fine. I'm a pretty good student of baseball history. 60 was a memorable one for a variety of reasons. With the Pirates and Yankees, that has to stand out there as well. For ancient historians, go look up 1912 sometime. I'm telling you. But that's a good one. That was the Red Sox and the Giants. But it had a lot in it, of course, and the characters. The Reds in the parade of future Hall of Famers and Hall of Famers who should be in the Hall of Fame, such as Dave Concepcion, who I always voted for. It was drama, and then of course we had the 3 days of rain. You mentioned the 3 days of rain. This is the old days too for the media. Guys were running out of money, and I had invited 3 of my friends from the media. They come down to my house for dinner one night, saving some money. So and then we had the fabulous game 6 and 7. The great what if about who should have, should Willoughby have come out of the game and Jim Burton. Well, the winning hit that Joe Morgan got was a bloop single, so you can't exactly excoriate the pitcher. Right. I'm sorry.
Hey, Bob, Boston's a great sports town. I think the best one in America, but the Red Sox have won 4 World Series now since breaking the curse in 2004. They've gone from a generation of fans, 2 generations maybe, hoping that they would live to see the day they win a World Series, to one that now expects one every year. How have the perception of the Red Sox in Boston changed? They used to be like these lovable, we're all behind the Red Sox, to now, they drive us crazy.
It was sadly predictable. I resisted the idea that people would get too greedy, but they are. I try not to be greedy here. I still appreciate those 4 championships of this regime, but the thing about the gnawing thing here though is that people question the motivation and the willingness to spend money that they were used to have. Consider this. And they can't refute this. This is a fact. When John Henry and Company bought the team, they were their sole sports franchise. That were their priority. Now, Fenway Sports Group is a massive international conglomerate in which the Red Sox are no longer the primary interest. We know it's Liverpool. That's number one. But in addition, they own the Red Sox, the Pittsburgh Penguins. They're involved in betting. They're involved in golf. They're involved in tennis. They're involved in TV and radio. There's no way they aren't that they have the same priority. And so when things happen, when they trade a Mookie Betts for financial reasons, and don't tell me it was a baseball trade, I'm sorry, Chaim, it's not true. And I like him, but no. And when they do some of the things they do, they haven't done, they're going to be tested again in this offseason. They got to retain Alec Bregman, and now today's story in the Globe, they should be making the goo eyes for Pete Alonso. He's a perfect fit for them, and they are a perfect fit for him. If he doesn't want now, if he wants to be made a Met lifer, God love him. Good, I'd love to see another great. But if he doesn't, hey, just and this is where he should be. So anyway, people question their motivation there, but they are greedy, and I try not to be.
Well, God forbid if they get Alonso, they ask him to put DH.
No, the idea is they need a first baseman.
Yes,
they need a first baseman, and a right-hand hitting, slugging first baseman is exactly what they need.
I imagine, Bob, that you loved basketball, but I'm guessing you loved baseball as well. As you can tell, you did. Gammons and you come up as interns at the same time. Could it have gone the other way? You being a baseball guy most of your career and Peter a basketball guy?
My goal, if you asked me at age, 21, what do I want to do? I would have said baseball. Baseball was my foundation sport growing up, baseball and college basketball. College, you notice where I said college basketball. That's how I grew up. I love baseball. I always say to these people, if you think about this, have you ever thought about this in your whole life? What if someone said, you've got the filibuster for your life for like an hour, okay? What topic would you choose? Well, there's no question in my mind. For an hour, a month, a day, a year, the topic would be baseball. And most people and everyone on this earth, everyone on this earth knows more about one subject than they know about every other subject, whatever that subject is. You've probably never given that. I'm not saying you, but people never give this a thought, but I give this a thought. And the topic that I know the most about, more than any other thing that I've ever been encountered with in my life, is baseball, history of baseball, everything about baseball. So but I love basketball too. That's before I played better, okay, and longer, and I love basketball. So it's like a 51-49 deal. So anyway, to answer your question, I would have been better off in baseball. Peter could handle basketball. He's a Tar Heel. In fact, we bonded over two things immediately. As that day, June 10th, 1968, we were fellow summer interns meeting at the Boston Globe. Me, the kid from Jersey and Lawrenceville School, and him, the kid from Groton, Mass, and Groton Academy and Groton School. We hit it off over baseball and basketball, okay? But he was put on this earth to cover baseball. He's the greatest baseball writer in a city that has had an extraordinary number. We've got more members. By the way, the Globe itself has more writers in Cooperstown Wing Hall of Fame than any other paper, historically. Okay, but the best of them all was Peter Gammons. Nobody wrote baseball or baseball notes the way Peter Gammons did. He could have handled basketball. I love baseball, but I never would have equaled what Peter Gammons did.
Well, some would say you did just fine doing covering the hardwood floors. So we love having you on here. You're a prince. I enjoyed your book, Scribe: My Life in Sports. It's one of, like I said, too many books to count, Bob. But you're welcome back here anytime. Thanks for joining us.
Number's 14, by the way.
Yeah, it seems like a lot more.
And
Thanks
Bob,
for having me, guys. That was fun.
Bob, I tell you one thing. You're now a 4-time guest here. When you get to 5,
Oh,
you get
yeah.
the official Past Our Prime towel.
Yes. Saturday Night Live gives you the robes for 5-time hosts.
Exactly.
As I always say, you know where to find me. Okay.
You're the best.
Enjoy your day, Bob. Thank you.
Thanks, man.
Bye, guys.
TV radio. Got a bunch of stuff here to talk about. World Series is quickly turning into a classic, and for the most part, NBC's coverage is helping turn baseball into must-see TV. The camera work and production is unmatched, but they don't really like or give good grades to the broadcasters. And I think, how about this? I didn't know this. Kurt Gowdy's the play-by-play guy for games 1, 3, 5, and 7, and Joe Garagiola for games 2, 4, and 6. So kind of hard to build a rapport with your analyst, which was Tony Kubek, if you're going back and forth between your main guy. Following season, Garagiola would take over as NBC's lead play-by-play guy, replacing Gowdy. The Cowboy was one of the best to ever do it, but NBC was moving on to Joe Garagiola, who was also very good. I enjoyed him doing baseball for years and years.
Scott, did you find out why they did that with the announcers?
I don't know why they did that. I mean,
Okay.
No.
That's interesting.
Right?
It doesn't make sense.
No. What's going on with the Cuban ball players there, Mark?
Well, they said after the World Series, they made an announcement that a team of major leaguers will travel to Havana in March to play a Cuban All-Star team, which is really interesting because, baseball is huge in Cuba. And I mean, Louis Tiant, played in the United States, and Fidel Castro let him, I guess, come to the United States to play baseball. But Fidel Castro was actually a baseball player one time too in Cuba. That might have been his dream actually when he was a teenager and a young person, was being a baseball player.
I think he tried out for, of all team, the Washington Senators.
Well, you know what? I'm going to give you a little history lesson. After he overthrew Batista, everyone thinks that Cuba immediately became a communist country. He actually came to the States, and there was the U.S. had a chance to wine and dine him, and say, "Hey, be a democratic society and stuff." But I don't think he wasn't given like the welcome. Russia went all out and and Russia really wanted to get their thumb on the Western Hemisphere. So basically, I think Castro felt slighted, and that's kind of he went over to the communist way.
He was a peach. Bill, before we move on from the TV radio, you had something interesting to say.
You don't hear the national anthem on the Monday Night Football games. Why? Because the network sells the time during which the Star Spangled Banner is played to sponsors at more than $500,000 for every 30 seconds. So last week during the anthem, ABC gave its viewers during the anthem 2 commercials and an NFL promo. One of the commercials was the NFL's role in American history. Yeah, you go. There you go. You know, 1975. You know,
Yeah.
forget
Now,
America.
you know, that was
they,
that was
they were getting into the selling of everything then.
they sure were. They were just realizing, ooh, you know how we can make some money on this?
On everything.
Yep. Stop mooning over Miami. From 1968 to 1979, the Miami football program was a disaster. 47-78 over that 12-year span. Here in 75, Coach Carl Selmer was hoping that despite an 0-4 start to the season, they were turning a corner. 2-8 that season. The corner wouldn't be turned for another 5 seasons. When Howard Schnellenberger turned the program around, they went 9-3 in 1980, won a national championship in 83 before Jimmy Johnson and Dennis Erickson and Larry Coker took the program to even bigger heights. They all won national championships. I think Erickson won a couple. But since 2004, only 2 10-plus win seasons, and their record in bowl games, 2-13. So we'll see if that changes this season. Looking pretty good at the time of this show. But yeah, the Hurricanes, we like to think of them as being, you know, pretty much a regular force in college football, but they sucked back then.
Yeah, they sucked so much that one sports writer predicted them to have an 0-11 finish. Well, they only played 10 games that year. Even the sports writers don't know anything about it. That's how bad they are.
For sure. What else was going on in college football 50 years ago? You got anything, Billy?
No, I don't.
All right. Well, then I'm gonna ignore you then.
Exactly.
Ignore 'em.
Please do.
USC's Ricky Bell had 1,068 yards in 6 games, an average of 178 yards per game, while Cal's Chuck Muncie contributed 149 yards, 3 touchdowns, and even a 47-yard touchdown pass in a big win over Oregon State. But Mark, neither of them compare to Tony Dorsett.
Nope. Tony Dorsett was kind of a good football player there. Playing for Pittsburgh, he rushed 21 times for 268 yards and scored 4 touchdowns as the Pitt Panthers defeated Army 52-20.
And he wins the Heisman next year. Is that right? 76?
76.
Yeah.
Yeah, 76.
Let's talk a little tennis and Davis Cup action. Jimbo does his bit for Uncle Sam. Jimmy Connors is finally playing Davis Cup tennis. And how is the #1 player in the world doing for his country? Just fine, thank you. He's taken on Venezuela. And how did he fare there, Billy?
He did. He beat a big man, Humphrey Hose, 6'4", 6'1", 6'3", to deliver the opening point for the Americans.
Yeah, the victory marked a new
Humphrey
chapter.
Hose had a great serve and nothing else.
I did not know that. Yeah. And what was Connors, one of his strengths was return a serve. So
Yes.
that kind of negated that. Connors, who had once turned his back on Davis Cup, is playing for new captain Tony Trabert. Connors appears re-energized and humble, embracing his role on the team with newfound seriousness. He said, if I mess up when I lose and it's just me, then it's just me who lost. But here, it's not just me. So dare I say that Jimmy is growing up right before our eyes and enjoying Davis Cup action.
Come down the stretch they come.
For the record, because somebody's got to keep score.
All right, let's get to the end here. For the record, Bill.
Let's just say we go back to hockey here. The Kings, center Marcel Dion, he's proving his worth since the Kings got him. He has 5 goals in the Kings' 4 straight wins. He's maintaining the record points, which was 366 pace he set in his first 4 NHL seasons. He did pretty well in LA.
He's got something outside of the
He does. I was at Crypto Arena the other day. He's got a statue out there. He's got a statue as part of King's history, And I think an issue from now we'll talk about a guy that said he'll not come to anything in LA. Yeah, he did. He did all right.
Mark, what do you got?
I got a golfer by the name of Don January. Just such a great name. He defeated Larry Heinsohn on the second hole of a sudden death playoff to win the San Antonio, Texas Open. Don, not the greatest golfer in the world, but a pretty good one, He won the 1967 PGA Championship. He won 45, had 45 professional wins. He tied for fourth in the 71 Masters. And he did well on the senior tour as well, too. He was like the money winner on the senior tour in 1980, 83, and 84.
Alvin Dark has won 2 division titles and a World Series since being hired by Charlie Finley to manage the A's in 1974. And all that did was get him fired at the end of the 75 season. So thanks for playing, Alvin.
Every name has a story. These are the faces in the crowd.
Dorothy Reese Gui, Billy, or as we like to call her, Dottie.
That's right. She was formerly Dorothy Scott. Don't forget that name. She's 53. She broke 2 age group 50 to 54 swim records and won 5 gold medals at the National Masters meet in Knoxville, Tennessee. Now, Mississippi State's football stadium is known as Davis-Wade Stadium. It used to be known and is still sort of known as Scott Field. That stadium was named after Scott Field, who happens to be the father of Dorothy Scott, or Dorothy Reese Geer. Basically, Mississippi State's football stadium is named after Dorothy Scott's dad.
Way to go, Dottie. Mark, what is yours? Yours about pickleball or bowling, or what are you talking about?
I got Kathy Dyack, who's 47 years old. She's already a grandmother at 47, from Manchester, Connecticut. She has the highest average among U.S. women duck pin bowlers. So I'm going duck pin bowling. What the heck is duck pin bowling? And those are basically, it's like smaller bowling. Like the bowling ball is much smaller in your hand and the pins are different. So like the balls are, maybe half the size of a normal bowling ball in weight and size. The pins look a little different too. They're a little shorter and fatter with the smaller ball and stuff like that. So
I picture what's that game, like at carnivals and stuff where, you roll the ball and it goes up like a ramp and it lands like in the 50-point thing and you win a stuffed
animal. A skee ball.
Skee ball. Yeah. I mean, it's bigger than a ball like that, but that's what I'm picturing is something a little dialed down from bowling.
Yeah, the duck pins are shorter and squattier. It's kind of like miniature golf, I guess. To golf, I guess it's a smaller, version of bowling.
From the locker room to your living room, it's time for the 19 hole.
One of the things Sports Illustrated had for years and years and years was the curse of SI. What do you got, Mark?
Well, I've got this letter that's sent in from someone who's very upset at Sports Illustrated. His name is Charlie Henriksen, and he's from Chicago, my hometown. He says, the notorious SI jinx has held up pretty well in recent weeks. Following your August 25th Dream of Glory on Green Bay cover, the Packers go 0-4. Then you have number 1 Oklahoma on the cover. They fall to number 2. I really don't see that as being a big deal. Then after Mean Joe Green of the Steelers appears, the Steelers lose to the Bills. Then you have Rick Slager of Notre Dame on the cover, and the Irish lose to Michigan State.
Yep.
And for October 6th, you questioned where there was talking about the Oakland A's winning a 4th World Series title. Well, we know what happened there. So he's basically saying, please don't put any Chicago teams on the cover. They don't have to put the Cubs on the cover. They were cursed anyway.
Right. Yeah. They've been pretty much cursed the entire city other than a little stretch with Jordan for about 100 years. Bill, we talked a little bit earlier about the difference between Ricky Bell and Tony Dorsett and Archie Griffin's going for his second Heisman in a row, but they don't always get this right, do they?
They don't. And according to Michael G. Hutzko, he's not taking it anymore. He's from Seal Beach, California. He says the Heisman Trophy is purportedly given to that player who is the finest performance of the year in college football. That being the case, past performance and class standing should be ignored in naming the recipient Archie Griffin and Joe Washington. He says it should have been Heisman Trophy winner Ricky Bell of USC. So you go back and you look at the stats. Bell he had carried the ball 357 times for 1,875 yards, 13 TDs, 5.1 average. Griffin, 245 to 1,357, 4 TDs for a 5.5 average. I think Bell earned that one.
Yeah, I mean, we talk about SC being tailback U, and for years and years, I thought both Bell and Anthony Davis won the Heisman.
Yeah.
They were right there.
The thing
with
is,
those
you
other
think back to
guys.
Davis, he had 5 touchdowns in a game. Even that you would think would, sort of move you to the front against
Yeah.
Notre Dame.
Yep.
Archie Griffin.
19th hole for me. I got one on the fight, right? Sir, as a longtime sports fan who appreciates excellent writing, I must tell you that Mark Cram's article, Lottie Lottie, He's Great, on the All Lee Frazier fight is the finest piece of sports journalism I have ever read. Call it courage, stamina, adrenaline, or dedication, but both fighters had it. Besides bringing out the worst in the human psyche, there are times when boxing brings out the best. That's Stephen Winninger from New Haven, Connecticut. Stephen, I agree 100%. In the almost 2 years of reading these Sports Illustrated articles, this one by Mark Cram Sr., about as good as I've ever read. And the pictures by Neil Leifer were just as good. Sports Illustrated at its best. So nice way to wrap things up. Usually we go negative in the 19th hole, but not this time. This time, hats off to Mark Cram Sr. And we had his son on a couple weeks ago to talk about that fight. The thrill in Manila doesn't get better than that. That's it. We're done. Happy Halloween. Billy, what's Callie going as?
She's going as Zoe from Demon Hunters. I'm going as the Sasha boy, baby Sasha.
Demon Hunters? I don't know that.
K-pop Demon Hunters.
Yeah, they're really popular.
It's all the rage right
You
now.
old fogey.
So she'll be one of the girls, and I'll be one of the Demon Hunter guys.
Just
with my blue hair.
Nice. That sounds terrifying. Wonderful.
I agree with you, buddy. I agree with you. It'll be fun. Last year's I went as Olaf, so at least I'm not in a costume this time.
Good. Next week, the greatest World Series ever played is over. We'll talk the Big Red Machine in a week, but before then, have a great time Friday as a Demon Hunter, Billy. And Mark, don't go trick-or-treating as a streaker anymore. If you come to my house, I'm calling the cops, okay? No more of that.
I want my party invite.
You're no fun.
We just have a different idea of fun. You find it fun to be streaking, and I find it fun to see you handcuffed as you're streaking. So until next week, boys, I'm Scott. That's Bill. That's Mark. And we are
Past Our Prime.